In a small town called Stratford-upon-Avon, there lived a young boy named William Shakespeare. He loved to play outside with his friends and listen to the wonderful stories his mother told him. Little did he know, he would one day become one of the greatest storytellers in history. As William grew older, he started going to a local school where he learned to read and write. He found the stories in his books fascinating and often imagined himself as the characters. His favorite stories were about knights, dragons, and daring adventures. One day, William's teacher introduced the class to a new kind of story called a play. These were stories acted out by people on a stage. William was amazed and excited. He began writing his own little plays and performed them with his friends in their backyards. When William was a teenager, he moved to London, a big city with many theaters. He started working at one of these theaters, doing small jobs like holding props and helping the actors. He watched every play he could, learning how to make stories come alive on stage. William soon began writing his own plays. His first ones were simple, but people enjoyed them. He wrote about love, friendship, and adventure. His plays were performed in front of big audiences, and everyone began to know his name. As William got better at writing, his plays became more exciting and imaginative. He wrote about magical forests, mischievous fairies, and brave heroes. One of his most famous plays was about two young lovers, Romeo and Juliet, whose love was so strong it could conquer any obstacle. People from all over England came to see William's plays. He became very famous and even performed in front of Queen Elizabeth I. She loved his stories and often invited him to her palace to entertain her in her court. William continued to write many wonderful plays, including comedies that made people laugh and tragedies that made them cry. He wrote about kings and queens, and about the everyday lives of ordinary people. His stories were full of emotions and lessons about life. As he grew older, William decided to return to his hometown, Stratford-upon-Avon. He had written many plays and poems, and his work had inspired countless people. He spent his days with his family, sharing the stories he had created and teaching others how to write their own. William Shakespeare's plays and poems are still loved by people all over the world today. His stories continue to be performed in theaters, and his words are read by students in schools. He showed us that with imagination and creativity, we can create worlds that live on forever. Wilbur and Orville Wright were two brothers who loved to tinker with toys and make things fly. They grew up in a small town called Dayton, Ohio. Ever since they were little, they were fascinated by the idea of flying like birds. One day, their father brought home a small toy helicopter made of bamboo and rubber bands. They wound up the rubber band and watched it soar into the air. The toy sparked a fire in their hearts, and they vowed to create something that could carry people into the sky. As they grew older, Wilbur and Orville started reading all about flight. They studied birds and how their wings worked. They also read about other inventors who had tried to build flying machines. They learned that understanding how to control the aircraft was just as important as making it fly. The brothers didn't have much money, but they were determined. They opened a bicycle shop to fund their experiments. Bicycles taught them a lot about balance and control, which they knew would be important for their flying machine. In 1899, they built their first glider and tested it by flying it like a kite. They discovered that their design needed more work. They kept experimenting and improving their designs. They were very patient and never gave up, even when things didn't work out as planned. After many trials and errors, the Wright brothers moved to Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, where the winds were perfect for testing their gliders. They built a larger glider and took turns flying it. They realized they needed a better way to control the flight, so they invented a system called wing warping. With this new control system, they built a powered aircraft in 1903, which they called the Wright Flyer. It had a 12-horsepower engine and 2 propellers. On December 17, 1903, Orville took the first flight. The plane flew for 12 seconds and covered 120 feet. Wilbur's turn followed, and he flew even farther. They had done it. The Wright brothers didn't stop there. They continued to improve their designs, making their planes safer and more reliable. They demonstrated their flying machines to the world, proving that humans could fly. People were amazed, and the world of aviation was changed forever. Wilbur and Orville's success was not just because of their inventions but their teamwork, perseverance, and curiosity. They showed that with hard work and dedication, dreams could come true. They inspired many others to follow in their footsteps and explore the skies. Today, the Wright brothers are remembered as pioneers of aviation. Their first flight at Kitty Hawk is celebrated as a monumental achievement. The spirit of their adventure lives on, reminding us all to dream big and never give up. Walt Disney was a boy with big dreams. He was born in a small town called Marceline in Missouri. Walt loved drawing and creating stories. Even when he was just a little boy, every day, he would find a piece of paper and a pencil and let his imagination run wild. Walt's family had a farm, and he would often draw the animals he saw around him, like cows, chickens, and pigs. His love for drawing was clear from a very young age. When Walt was 7, his family moved to Kansas City. There, Walt discovered a new passion: trains. His uncle worked on the railroad, and Walt loved to watch the trains go by. He even got to help his uncle sell snacks to the passengers. But even with his fascination for trains, Walt never stopped drawing. He would draw pictures of trains, conductors, and passengers, using his imagination to bring them to life. As Walt grew older, he continued to draw and tell stories. He attended high school in Chicago, where he took art classes and contributed to the school newspaper with his cartoons. Walt's talent was clear to everyone who saw his work. He dreamed of becoming a professional artist someday, but it wasn't always easy. He faced many challenges and setbacks, but he never gave up on his dreams. After high school, Walt decided to pursue his dream of becoming a professional artist. He moved back to Kansas City and started working at an art studio. There, he learned about animation and became fascinated by the idea of creating moving pictures. Walt started his own small company called Laugh-O-Gram Films, where he created short animated films, though the company didn't last long. It was the beginning of something big. Walt didn't let the failure of Laugh-O-Gram Films stop him. He moved to Hollywood with his brother Roy and started a new company called Disney Brothers Studio. They created a character named Oswald the Lucky Rabbit, which became quite popular. But when they lost the rights to Oswald, Walt had to come up with something new. That's when he created a little mouse named Mickey. Mickey Mouse quickly became a sensation. Walt and his team created a cartoon called Steamboat Willie, which was one of the first cartoons to have synchronized sound. People loved Mickey, and soon, he was famous all over the world. Walt's dream was coming true. But he didn't stop there. He continued to create new characters and stories, always pushing the boundaries of animation. Walt had big ideas for the future. He wanted to create a place where families could have fun together. A place filled with the magic of his characters and stories. This idea became Disneyland, a theme park like no other. When Disneyland opened in 1955, it was an instant success. Families from all over came to experience the magic of Walt's imagination brought to life. Walt Disney's creativity didn't stop at Disneyland. He continued to produce animated and live-action films, bringing beloved stories to life on the big screen. Movies like Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Cinderella, and Peter Pan became classics that are still loved by children today. Walt believed in the power of dreams and imagination, and he worked hard to make his visions a reality. Even as he grew older, Walt never stopped dreaming. He began planning another theme park in Florida, which would eventually become Walt Disney World. Sadly, Walt passed away before he could see it completed, but his brother Roy made sure the dream came true. Walt Disney World opened in 1971, and it continues to bring joy to millions of people every year. Walt Disney's legacy lives on through his movies, theme parks, and beloved characters. He taught us that with imagination, hard work, and perseverance, anything is possible. Walt's story inspires us to dream big and never give up, no matter how difficult the journey may be. So the next time you watch a Disney movie or visit a Disney park, remember the man who started it all with a pencil, a piece of paper, and a lot of imagination. Vincent van Gogh was born in a small village in the Netherlands. As a young boy, he loved to explore the fields of bright yellow sunflowers, the tall green grasses, and the clear blue skies. Vincent would often sit by the river, watching the sunlight dance on the water, dreaming of all the beautiful things he would one day create. When Vincent was a bit older, he started to draw. He used pencils and colored chalks to create pictures of everything he saw around him. He drew his little brother Theo, his family's cozy home, and the animals in the fields. His parents and teachers noticed his talent and encouraged him to keep drawing. Vincent felt happy whenever he had a pencil in his hand. As Vincent grew up, he found school difficult. He was a sensitive and quiet boy who felt different from the other children. He preferred to spend his time alone, wandering through the countryside and capturing nature's beauty in his sketchbook. He loved the way the light changed throughout the day and how the colors seemed to come to life. When he was a young man, Vincent decided to travel to different cities and countries to learn more about art. He visited museums, met other artists, and studied their techniques. He was fascinated by how different artists saw the world in unique ways. Vincent worked hard, practicing every day to improve his skills. Vincent moved to Paris, where he discovered a new world of art. He met many famous artists, including Claude Monet and Paul Gauguin. They inspired him to use brighter colors and bold brushstrokes. Vincent painted beautiful gardens, lively cafes, and bustling city streets. His paintings were full of energy and emotion. Despite his talent, Vincent struggled with sadness and loneliness. He often felt misunderstood and isolated, but he found comfort in his art and in his letters to his brother Theo, who was always supportive and encouraging. Vincent poured his heart and soul into his paintings, creating masterpieces that would one day be celebrated around the world. One of Vincent's favorite things to paint was the night sky. He loved the way the stars twinkled and the moon glowed. He created one of his most famous paintings, Starry Night, which showed a swirling sky full of stars above a quiet village. This painting is now loved by people all over the world. Vincent also loved to paint flowers. He created beautiful pictures of sunflowers with their bright yellow petals and tall green stems. His sunflower paintings were so vibrant and full of life that people couldn't help but smile when they saw them. Vincent's love for nature shone through in every brushstroke. Even though Vincent faced many challenges in his life, he never gave up on his dream of becoming a great artist. He continued to paint every day, capturing the beauty he saw in the world around him. His dedication and passion for art were unwavering, and he left behind a legacy of incredible paintings. Today, Vincent van Gogh is remembered as one of the greatest artists of all time. His paintings are displayed in museums all over the world, inspiring millions of people with their beauty and emotion. Vincent's story teaches us the importance of following our dreams, no matter how difficult the journey may be. Thank you. Susan B. Anthony loved to read. When she was just a little girl, she would sit for hours with her nose in a book. She learned so many things from reading, and she dreamed of doing something important one day. Susan's father ran a cotton mill, and he believed all his children, including the girls, should get a good education. So, Susan went to school, where she studied hard and loved learning about everything, especially stories of brave people. When Susan was a teenager, she became a teacher herself. She was shocked to learn that women teachers were paid much less than men. This made her think about fairness and how things should be equal for everyone. Susan met other people who also believed in equal rights. She attended meetings and listened to speeches about making the world a fairer place. She felt inspired and knew she had to do something to help. One day, Susan met Elizabeth Cady Stanton, a woman who was fighting for women's rights. They became great friends and decided to work together to make sure women could have the same rights as men, especially the right to vote. Susan traveled all over the country, giving speeches and organizing meetings. She faced many challenges, and some people were very angry with her. But she never gave up because she knew it was important to keep fighting for what was right. Susan and Elizabeth worked hard to get a law passed that would allow women to vote. They wrote letters, gave speeches, and even published a newspaper to spread their message. Slowly, more and more people started to support their cause. One day, Susan decided to vote in an election, even though it was against the law for women to do so. She was arrested and put on trial, but she used this opportunity to speak out even more about why women should have the right to vote. Though Susan did not live to see women win the right to vote, her hard work and determination inspired many others. Finally, in 1920, the 19th Amendment to the Constitution was passed, allowing women to vote in the United States. This was a victory for Susan and all the women who had fought alongside her. Today, people remember Susan B. Anthony as a brave and determined woman who never gave up on her dream of equality. Her legacy continues to inspire us all to stand up for what is right and to believe that we can. Thomas Edison loved to explore and experiment from a very young age. One day, when he was only 5 years old, he saw a goose sitting on a nest of eggs. Thomas wondered what it would be like to sit on some eggs himself. So, he gathered some goose eggs and sat on them, hoping they would hatch. Though the eggs didn't hatch, Thomas learned that experimenting was fun and full of surprises. When Thomas was 7, his family moved to a new home near Port Huron, Michigan. Thomas discovered a library full of books there. He loved reading so much that he decided to read every single book in the library. His favorite subjects were science and history. Thomas's curiosity grew with each book he read, and his mind brimmed with ideas. At 10, Thomas built his first science lab in the basement of his home. Using old bottles and jars, he filled them with different chemicals he had collected. He labeled each one carefully and conducted experiments. His mother was always encouraging and even helped him with some of his projects. This little lab became Thomas's favorite place to spend his time. When Thomas was 12, he started selling newspapers on the Grand Trunk Railroad to earn some money. He set up a small printing press in one of the train cars and published his own newspaper called the Grand Trunk Herald. People loved reading his newspaper, and Thomas learned valuable lessons about business and communication. At the age of 15, Thomas saved a 3-year-old boy from being hit by a runaway train. The boy's grateful father, a station agent, taught Thomas how to operate the telegraph as a reward. Thomas quickly became very good at using the telegraph and even invented a device that allowed him to send and receive messages more efficiently. By the time Thomas was in his early 20s, he had moved to New York City with only a few dollars in his pocket. He managed to fix a broken stock ticker machine in a brokerage firm, which impressed the company so much that they hired him as a full-time inventor. This job gave Thomas the opportunity to create even more amazing inventions. In his late 20s, Thomas invented the phonograph, a machine that could record and play back sound. He demonstrated the phonograph to a room full of people by recording his own voice and then playing it back. Everyone was amazed and cheered loudly. It was one of Thomas's proudest moments. When Thomas was in his early 30s, he worked on perfecting the electric light bulb. He experimented with thousands of different materials to find the perfect filament that would make the bulb last a long time. After many trials and errors, Thomas finally succeeded. His electric light bulb changed the world by making it possible for people to have light at any time of the day or night. Thomas continued to invent new things throughout his life, from the motion picture camera to improved versions of the telegraph and telephone. His inventions made people's lives easier and more enjoyable. Thomas always believed that hard work and perseverance were the keys to success. In his later years, Thomas loved to share his knowledge with young inventors. He often said, "Genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration." Thomas Edison's life was a testament to the power of curiosity, imagination, and hard work. His inventions continue to inspire and benefit people all over the world. One sunny day in San Francisco, a little boy named Steve loved to tinker with gadgets. He would take apart radios and put them back together, curious about how things worked. His parents watched with smiles as Steve's eyes sparkled with curiosity. As Steve grew older, his passion for electronics grew too. In middle school, he met a friend named Woz, who shared his love for creating cool gadgets. Together, they built a small computer in their garage, dreaming of changing the world one day. Steve was always a big dreamer. In high school, he imagined a future where everyone could have their own personal computer. He believed that computers should be simple and fun to use, just like toys. In college, Steve's curiosity took him on a journey to learn new things. He took classes in calligraphy, the art of beautiful writing, which later inspired him to think about design and creativity in new ways. One day, Steve and Woz decided to start their own company. They called it Apple, inspired by Steve's love for apples. They worked day and night to create their first computer, the Apple I, which amazed everyone with its simplicity and power. As Apple grew, Steve continued to dream big. He wanted to create a computer that was even more user-friendly. This led to the creation of the Macintosh, a computer with a mouse and a graphical interface, making it easy and fun to use. Steve's journey wasn't always easy. He faced many challenges and even had to leave Apple for a while. But he never gave up. He started another company called Next, where he continued to innovate and dream of new possibilities. Years later, Steve returned to Apple, with renewed energy and creativity. He introduced groundbreaking products like the iPod, which changed the way people listened to music, and the iPhone, which revolutionized communication. Steve's inventions brought joy to millions of people around the world. He believed that technology should be intuitive and beautiful, making people's lives better and more enjoyable. Stephen's big adventure. Once upon a time, In a little town called Oxford, there was a boy named Stephen. Stephen loved to look up at the stars and wonder about the mysteries of the universe. He had a big, curious mind and always asked lots of questions. One day, his teacher said, "Stephen, you have a brilliant mind. One day, you might even become a great scientist." Quote, Stephen grew up with 3 wonderful siblings and loving parents. His family always encouraged him to learn and explore. They had a lot of books at home, and Stephen read them all. He dreamed of going to space and discovering new planets. He built a model rocket ship with his dad and pretended to travel to the moon. When Stephen was a teenager, he went to a big school called St. Albans School. He studied very hard and loved math and science the most. His friends called him Einstein because he was so smart. Stephen also liked to have fun. He joined the school rowing team and raced boats on the river. After high school, Stephen went to a famous place called Oxford University. He studied physics and learned about black holes and the universe. But during his time at Oxford, he started to feel clumsy and noticed that he was having trouble walking. His friends helped him, but no one knew what was wrong. Stephen finished his studies at Oxford and went to another famous school called Cambridge University. While he was there, doctors told him that he had a disease called ALS. They said he might not live very long. Stephen was very sad, but then he decided he would make the most of his time and continue to study the universe. He was determined to become a great scientist. Stephen met a wonderful woman named Jane, and they fell in love. They got married and had 3 beautiful children. Jane helped Stephen with everything, and they made a great team. Stephen continued his work and made many amazing discoveries about black holes and the universe. As the years went by, Stephen's disease made it harder for him to move and talk. But he didn't let that stop him. He started using a special computer that talked for him. With this computer, he could share his brilliant ideas with the world. He wrote a famous book called A Brief History of Time that explained the mysteries of the universe in a way everyone could understand. Stephen traveled all over the world, giving speeches and meeting other scientists. He inspired many people with his story and his incredible mind. He showed everyone that no matter what challenges you face, you can achieve great things if you never give up. Even though Stephen's body became weaker, his mind stayed sharp. He continued to work on new ideas about the universe and black holes. He received many awards and honors for his contributions to science. People from all over the world admired his courage and determination. Stephen lived a long and amazing life, full of adventure and discovery. He taught us that the power of the human spirit can overcome any obstacle. Stephen's story reminds us to always be curious, to ask questions, and to never give up on our dreams. And every time we look up at the stars, we can remember his incredible journey and the lessons he left behind. And so, Stephen's big adventure continues to inspire us all, reminding us that the universe is full of wonder, and that we, too, can reach for the stars. Rosa Parks was a little girl who loved playing in the fields and reading books with her brother. She lived in Alabama, a place full of sunshine and friendly faces. Rosa's parents always told her to stand up for what was right, even if it was hard. As Rosa grew older, she noticed something that made her sad. There were rules that said some people could do certain things while others couldn't, just because of the color of their skin. This made Rosa feel very upset, but she didn't know what she could do to change it. Rosa went to a school for African American children. Every day, she walked long distances because the school bus wouldn't pick up black children. Rosa didn't think it was fair, but she cherished her education and loved learning new things. When Rosa became a young woman, she got a job as a seamstress. She worked hard, sewing beautiful dresses and clothes. Despite her hard work, she was still treated unfairly because of the color of her skin. But Rosa never lost hope. One chilly December day, Rosa finished her work and got on the bus to go home. She sat in the section where African Americans were allowed to sit. The bus started to fill up, and soon, all the seats were taken. The bus driver told Rosa to give up her seat for a white passenger. Rosa remembered what her parents told her about standing up for what was right. She looked at the driver and said, "No." Rosa knew this was a brave thing to do, but she felt it was the right thing. The driver called the police, and Rosa was arrested. News of Rosa's arrest spread quickly. Many people were upset about how she was treated. They decided to do something about it. Led by a young preacher named Martin Luther King Jr., they started a boycott, refusing to ride the buses until the rules were changed. For over a year, African Americans walked, carpooled, and found other ways to get around. They were determined to stand up against the unfair rules. Rosa's courage had inspired them all to work together for change. Finally, the Supreme Court declared that segregation on public buses was illegal. Rosa and her friends were overjoyed. They had shown that standing up for what is right can make a big difference. Rosa felt proud and happy that she could help bring about such an important change. Rosa Parks continued to work for equality throughout her life. She became a symbol of courage and determination. Little girls and boys everywhere learned about Rosa Parks and how one person's bravery could inspire many others to make the world a better place. Once upon a time, in a small village in New York, there was a little girl named Isabella. Isabella was born a slave and lived with her family, working hard on a farm. She loved to listen to the birds sing and dream about a better life. As Isabella grew older, she was sold to different masters, which made her very sad. She missed her family and wondered why people had to be slaves. But Isabella was strong and brave, and she kept dreaming of freedom. One day, Isabella decided she couldn't stay a slave forever. She ran away from her master, taking her baby daughter with her. She found a kind family who helped her and gave her a safe place to stay. Isabella felt hope for the first time. Isabella changed her name to Sojourner Truth because she wanted to travel and spread the truth about slavery and freedom. She believed that everyone deserved to be free and treated equally. She started giving powerful speeches about her experiences. Sojourner Truth traveled to many places, telling people about the injustices of slavery. She spoke at churches, meetings, and even on the streets. Her words were so powerful that people began to listen and join her fight for freedom. During her travels, Sojourner met many other people who were also fighting for freedom, including famous leaders like Frederick Douglass and Harriet Tubman. Together, they inspired more and more people to join the cause against slavery. Sojourner also fought for women's rights, believing that women deserved the same rights as men. She gave a famous speech called, "Ain't I a Woman?" where she talked about her strength and the strength of all women. People were amazed by her courage. As Sojourner grew older, she never stopped fighting for justice. She continued to travel and speak, even when it was difficult. Her message of equality and freedom spread far and wide, touching the hearts of many. Sojourner's hard work paid off when slavery was finally abolished in the United States. She was overjoyed to see her dream of freedom come true. But she knew there was still work to be done. So she kept fighting for the rights of women and African Americans. Sojourner Truth became a beloved and respected figure, remembered for her bravery and dedication. She showed the world that one person's voice can make a big difference. Her legacy lives on, inspiring everyone to stand up for what is right and just. Part 1. Once upon a time, In a small town called Far Rockaway, there was a curious little boy named Richard Feynman. Richard loved to ask questions about how things worked. He would often take apart his toys just to see what was inside. One day, he even took apart his alarm clock and put it back together. Part 2. Richard's father, Melville Feynman, was a uniform salesman and a great storyteller. He loved to teach Richard about science using everyday things. One afternoon, they watched ants marching in a line. Melville asked, "Why do you think they do that?" Richard thought, and from that day, he always asked why about everything he saw. Part 3. When Richard started school, he was very excited. He loved math and science the most. His teacher noticed he was very good at solving puzzles and even gave him extra ones to solve. Richard would stay up late, working hard to figure them out, smiling every time he found the solution. Part 4. One day, Richard's mother, Lucille, gave him a little red wagon. Richard didn't just play with it. He wondered why it moved faster when he pulled it harder. He learned that the force he used made the wagon go faster. Richard loved discovering these fun facts about the world. Part 5. As Richard grew older, his curiosity never faded. He got a small chemistry set for his birthday, and he spent hours mixing different chemicals to see what would happen. He learned about reactions and even made a few small explosions. Safely. Of course. Part 6. Richard's favorite place was the library. He read every science book he could find. One day, he discovered a book about Albert Einstein. Richard was fascinated by Einstein's theories and wanted to learn everything he could about the universe. Part 7. In high school, Richard joined the math team and the science club. He loved helping his friends with their homework, and they called him a genius. Richard just thought he was lucky to have such fun and interesting subjects to study. Part 8. Richard went to college at MIT, where he studied physics. He spent countless hours in the lab, experimenting and learning. His professors were amazed at his ideas and experiments. Richard's curiosity and hard work were paying off. Part 9. After college, Richard became a professor and worked on many important projects. He helped solve big problems, like how to make safer airplanes, and even helped with the development of the atomic bomb during World War II. Richard always used his creativity and curiosity to find solutions. Part 10. Richard Feynman became one of the most famous scientists in the world. He won the Nobel Prize in Physics and wrote books to make science fun and understandable for everyone. Richard always believed that asking questions and being curious were the best ways to learn about the world, and he never stopped wondering why. Elizabeth was a young princess who loved to read books and learn new things. She lived in a big castle with tall towers and beautiful gardens. Her father was King Henry VIII, and her mother was Queen Anne Boleyn. Elizabeth had a curious mind and always asked lots of questions, much to everyone's delight. One sunny day, Elizabeth's life changed forever. Her mother, Queen Anne, was taken away, and Elizabeth no longer saw her. It was a confusing time, but Elizabeth stayed brave. Her father remarried many times, and she gained new brothers and sisters. Despite the changes, she continued to love learning and reading her books. Elizabeth had a special teacher named Roger Ascham who taught her many subjects like history, languages, and philosophy. She was an excellent student and could speak several languages, including Latin and French. Elizabeth's intelligence and curiosity grew with each passing day, and she dreamed of great adventures. When Elizabeth was a teenager, her father, King Henry VIII, passed away. Her half-brother Edward became king, but he was very young and sickly. Elizabeth knew she had to be strong and smart to navigate the tricky world of royal politics. She spent her days studying and preparing for whatever the future might hold. After King Edward's death, Elizabeth's half-sister Mary became queen. Queen Mary did not trust Elizabeth, and Elizabeth was often in danger. She was even imprisoned in the Tower of London for a time. But Elizabeth never lost hope and kept her faith that she would one day be free. When Queen Mary passed away, Elizabeth finally became Queen of England. She was just 25 years old and full of ideas to make her kingdom strong and prosperous. The people of England cheered for their new queen, and Elizabeth promised to rule with wisdom and fairness. Queen Elizabeth I faced many challenges during her reign. There were threats from other countries, and some people in England did not want her to be queen. But Elizabeth was clever and brave. She built a strong navy and defeated the Spanish Armada, one of the most powerful fleets in the world. Elizabeth loved the arts and supported famous writers like William Shakespeare. She enjoyed attending plays and encouraged creativity throughout her kingdom. Under her reign, England experienced a golden age of culture and exploration. She was known as the Virgin Queen because she never married, dedicating her life to her country instead. As Elizabeth grew older, she continued to be a wise and beloved ruler. She listened to her advisors but always made the final decisions herself. The people of England respected and adored her, and she worked tirelessly to ensure peace and prosperity for her kingdom. Queen Elizabeth I ruled England for 45 years, and her reign is remembered as one of the greatest in history. She passed away peacefully, having led her country through times of challenge and triumph. Elizabeth's legacy of intelligence, bravery, and dedication to her people lives on, inspiring generations to come. Pablo was a little boy who lived in Spain. He loved to draw and paint more than anything else in the world. His father, who was also an artist, gave him his first set of paints when he was just 7 years old. Pablo was so excited that he painted a picture of his family's pet pigeon. His father was amazed at how talented Pablo was at such a young age. As Pablo grew older, he continued to paint and draw every day. He drew pictures of his friends, his family, and even the beautiful landscapes around his home. His favorite place to paint was by the sea, where he could see the waves crashing against the rocks and the seagulls flying overhead. When Pablo turned 14, his family moved to a big city called Barcelona. There, he attended an art school where he learned new techniques and styles. He loved learning about famous artists from history and was inspired to try new things with his art. Pablo spent hours practicing and experimenting with different colors and shapes. In his teenage years, Pablo moved to Madrid to attend another art school. He was very excited but also a little nervous. In Madrid, he visited many museums and saw incredible works of art that filled him with ideas. He began to develop his own unique style, which made his paintings stand out from others. Pablo decided to travel to Paris, the city of art and culture. He saw the works of many great artists and was especially fascinated by the colorful and imaginative paintings. Inspired by what he saw, Pablo started to create his own masterpieces that were full of bright colors and unusual shapes. In Paris, Pablo met other artists who became his friends. They would often gather to paint and share ideas. One day, Pablo decided to paint in a completely different way. He used bold shapes and bright colors to create a painting that looked like a dream. Everyone was amazed by his creativity and originality. Pablo's new style of painting became known as Cubism. In Cubism, objects are broken up into different shapes and put back together in an interesting way. People were fascinated by this new style, and Pablo's paintings became very popular. He painted many famous works, including a picture of musical instruments and a portrait of his friend. As Pablo continued to paint, He experimented with different materials and techniques. He used sand, newspaper, and even bits of old wallpaper in his paintings. This made his art even more interesting and unique. People all over the world admired Pablo's creativity and imagination. Pablo never stopped creating new art. He made paintings, sculptures, and even designed costumes for plays. He was always trying new things and pushing the boundaries of what art could be. Pablo's work inspired many other artists to think outside the box and explore their own creativity. Pablo Picasso became one of the most famous artists in the world. His art is displayed in museums all over the globe, and his unique style continues to inspire people of all ages. Pablo showed that with imagination and hard work, you can create something truly extraordinary. In a small village in South Africa, there was a curious boy named Nelson. He loved playing with his friends, running through fields, and listening to stories from his elders. Nelson was always full of questions about the world around him. When Nelson started school, he was eager to learn. He walked many miles each day to get to his classroom. His teachers noticed how bright he was and encouraged him to keep studying hard. Nelson dreamed of making a big difference in the world one day. As Nelson grew older, he moved to the city of Johannesburg. There, he saw many unfair things. People were treated differently just because of the color of their skin. Nelson knew this wasn't right and wanted to change it. Nelson decided to become a lawyer so he could help people fight against these unfair laws. He worked very hard in school and eventually opened his own law office to defend those who were treated unjustly. Nelson joined a group called the African National Congress, ANC. They worked together to make South Africa a fairer place for everyone. Nelson and his friends organized peaceful protests and marches, asking for equal rights. The government did not like what Nelson and the ANC were doing. They arrested Nelson and put him in prison. Even though he was locked away, Nelson never gave up hope. He believed that one day, things would change for the better. Nelson spent a long time in prison, 27 years in total. During this time, people all around the world learned about his story. They started to support him in the fight for equality in South Africa. Nelson became a symbol of hope and courage. Finally, Nelson was released from prison. The whole country celebrated. Nelson continued to work hard to bring people together, no matter their skin color. He wanted everyone to live in a peaceful and fair South Africa. In 1994, something amazing happened. Nelson Mandela became the first black president of South Africa. He worked tirelessly to heal his country and make sure everyone had the same rights and opportunities. Nelson spent the rest of his life spreading messages of peace and forgiveness. He showed the world that one person can make a huge difference, no matter the challenges. Nelson Mandela's legacy lives on, inspiring people everywhere to stand up for what is right. Neil Armstrong was a young boy who loved looking up at the stars. Every night, he would stare at the sky and imagine what it would be like to visit the moon. He often told his parents about his dreams, and they would smile and encourage him to keep dreaming big. One day, Neil's parents took him to an air show. He was amazed by the airplanes flying high above, performing loops and tricks. From that day on, Neil knew he wanted to be a pilot. He started building model airplanes and reading books about flying. As Neil grew older, his passion for flying only grew stronger. He took his first flying lesson when he was just 15 years old. Neil felt like he was on top of the world as he soared through the sky. He worked hard and earned his pilot's license, making his dream a reality. After finishing high school, Neil went to college to study engineering, but his love for flying never faded. He joined the Navy and became a test pilot. flying all sorts of new and exciting aircraft. Neil was known for his bravery and skill in the air. One day, Neil received some exciting news. NASA, the space agency, was looking for astronauts to join their new space program. Neil was thrilled at the chance to explore space and immediately applied. After a series of tough tests and interviews, Neil was chosen to be an astronaut. Neil trained hard for his space missions. He learned how to operate spacecraft, perform spacewalks, and handle emergencies. All the while, he kept dreaming about the moon. Finally, the day came when Neil and his team were assigned to the Apollo 11 mission, which would attempt to land on the moon. On July 16, 1969, Neil and his fellow astronauts, Buzz Aldrin and Michael Collins, launched into space aboard the Apollo 11 spacecraft. The journey to the moon took 4 days, and Neil watched in awe as they traveled through the vastness of space. On July 20, 1969, the Apollo 11 spacecraft landed on the moon. Neil was the first to step onto the lunar surface. As he took his first step, he said the famous words, "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." Neil felt a mix of excitement and wonder as he explored the moon's surface. After spending several hours on the moon, collecting samples and taking photographs, Neil and Buzz returned to the spacecraft. They rejoined Michael, who had been orbiting the moon, and began their journey back to Earth. Everyone was eager to hear about their incredible adventure. When Neil returned home, he was celebrated as a hero. He shared his amazing experience with people all over the world, inspiring future generations to reach for the stars. Neil always reminded everyone that with hard work and determination, even the wildest dreams could come true. Once upon a time, in the beautiful city of Salzburg, Austria, a little boy named Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart was born. From a very young age, Wolfgang showed a special love for music. He would listen to his father, Leopold, play the violin and his sister, Nannerl, play the clavier. Even though he was just a baby, everyone could see that Mozart had a twinkle in his eye whenever he heard music. By the time Mozart was 3 years old, he was already trying to play the clavier himself. His tiny hands would press the keys, and surprisingly, he made lovely sounds. His father, Leopold, noticed his talent and started teaching him music seriously. Little Wolfgang learned quickly and enjoyed every moment of it. When Mozart was just 5 years old, he composed his first piece of music. It was a simple piece, but it was beautiful and full of joy. His father was so proud that he wrote it down for everyone to see. Wolfgang loved creating new melodies and would often hum tunes while playing with his toys. Leopold decided to take young Wolfgang and his sister on a grand tour across Europe to show everyone his son's amazing talent. They traveled to many cities, and Mozart played for kings and queens who were astonished by his skills. People couldn't believe how such a small boy could play the clavier and violin so wonderfully. During their travels, Mozart met many other musicians and learned new styles of music. He was always curious and asked lots of questions. His favorite place was Italy, where he learned to write operas. He even wrote his first opera, Mithridate, Re di Ponto, when he was just 11 years old. As Mozart grew older, his passion for music only got stronger. He composed symphonies, operas, and chamber music. One of his favorite activities was to sit at the piano and create new pieces, sometimes writing them down without making a single mistake. His music was full of life. Just like him, Mozart's music became famous all over Europe. He moved to Vienna, where he wrote some of his most famous works, including The Marriage of Figaro and Don Giovanni. People from all walks of life would come to hear him play and perform. Mozart's concerts were always packed with excited listeners. Even though Mozart was famous, he remained humble and kind. He loved to teach music to others and often gave lessons to children. He enjoyed sharing his love for music and helping others discover their own musical talents. Mozart believed that music was a gift meant to be shared with everyone. Mozart's life was filled with music, but it was also full of challenges. Sometimes, he struggled to make enough money, and there were times when he felt sad. But no matter what, he always found joy and comfort in his music. He continued to compose beautiful pieces that are still loved by many today. Mozart's music lives on, enchanting people all over the world. His story reminds us that with passion, hard work, and a little bit of magic, we can achieve great things. Mozart's melodies continue to inspire, bringing joy and beauty to all who listen. And so, the little boy from Salzburg, who loved music with all his heart, became one of the greatest composers the world has ever known. Maya was a little girl who loved words. She would sit for hours, listening to her grandmother tell stories and sing songs. Her favorite place was the library, where she could explore the world through books. Maya dreamed of writing her own stories one day. One day, something sad happened. Maya's parents separated, and she and her brother Bailey went to live with their grandmother in a small town called Stamps. Maya felt scared and lonely, but she found comfort in the stories and poems she read. In Stamps, Maya faced many challenges. People were often unkind because of the color of her skin. Despite this, her grandmother taught her to be strong and kind. Maya learned that love and kindness could light up even the darkest of days. Maya stopped speaking for a while after a terrible event made her feel very sad and scared. She believed that her words had caused harm. Her brother Bailey and her grandmother never gave up on her. They surrounded her with love and patience. One day, a kind teacher named Mrs. Flowers gave Maya a book of poetry. Mrs. Flowers told Maya that words could be powerful and healing. Slowly, Maya began to speak again and found joy in expressing herself through writing. Maya moved to San Francisco to live with her mother. There, she discovered a love for the arts. She danced, acted, and even became the first black streetcar conductor in the city. Maya felt proud of her accomplishments and continued to dream big. As Maya grew older, she traveled to many places and met many different people. She worked as a dancer, singer, and actress, and she wrote stories and poems. Maya's experiences helped her understand the world better and deepened her love for words. One day, Maya published her first book, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. It was a story about her life and all the challenges she had faced. People all around the world read her book and were inspired by her courage and strength. Maya continued to write many more books, poems, and plays. She spoke at events and taught people about love, kindness, and equality. Maya's words touched hearts and changed lives, spreading hope and inspiration everywhere she went. Maya Angelou's legacy lives on forever. Her powerful words remind us that we can overcome any challenge and that our voices matter. Through her stories and poems, Maya teaches us to be brave, to love ourselves, and to always believe in the power of our dreams. Thank you for watching the story of Maya Angelou. We hope you enjoyed learning about Maya Angelou's incredible journey. If you liked this video, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Let the world know about Maya Angelou and the amazing stories we share. Stay tuned for more captivating and educational stories from our channel. We appreciate your support and look forward to bringing you more fascinating tales.